Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'm Madeline Jacobs. I was a family physician in a rural practice in Fremont County here in Colorado for 28 years and finally threw the towel in. Why? The system was not allowing me to provide even basic care for my patients. In the last year of my practice, 3 asthmatics ended up on ventilators because they could not afford their inhalers. 3 people younger than 65 died from colon cancer because they could not afford colonoscopies. And almost all of these people had insurance. We live in a country whose Declaration of Independence proclaims that we have the right for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yet given that we live in bodies that will get sick, injured, and age, we cannot realize those rights if we cannot access health care. One would think that the purpose of a healthcare system would be to ensure that everyone is as healthy as possible so they can live full, productive lives. Yet the purpose of the American healthcare system is to maximize profit. And to do that, they deny healthcare. The insurance industry does this by collecting premiums and denying benefits. Big Pharma does this by manipulating lawmakers to allow monopolies, resulting in runaway prices. Hospital and practice corporations do this by maximizing the number of paying patients and making sure those with insurance are charged as much as possible for tests they may or may not need, while bleeding patients dry who do not have adequate coverage. The result is people dying from treatable disease or going bankrupt. The solution is not rocket science. In fact, over 70 countries around the world have made the moral decision to provide health care for all their people. The U.S. is the only industrialized democracy that denies this to its people. It has been shown around the world that single payer provides the most affordable health care that results in health outcomes superior to the United States and covers everyone. Yet in America, our life expectancy is decreasing, despite that little bump, relative to these countries. And maternal and infant mortality are increasing. In America, 1 in 4 cancer patients need to decide whether to die or leave their families with crippling medical debt. And yet the answer is here. Improved Medicare for All would solve all these problems, and thanks to Bernie Sanders in the Senate and Pramila Jayapal in the House, the solutions are sitting there in Congress. Multiple states are working to provide universal health care if our federal politicians continue to fail to take action. In the meantime, we are in a healthcare crisis. People are needlessly suffering and dying due to greed. We, the people, need to pressure the politicians who care more where their campaign funds are coming from than the well-being of their constituents. We, the people, can right this wrong. Vote, caucus. Let your representatives know that you support improved Medicare for all and will not vote for them if they don't. We can do this. We are doing this. And just an added footnote, we need someone in Denver to help us organize for this, for the Colorado Foundation and Universal Health Care. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madeline, for sharing your story. Folks, coming up next is a tenant of Colorado's Democratic community. He's been there for so many different causes, both that affect his own community and outside. He'll be speaking today about the Green New Deal and representing Colorado Rising. Everyone give it up for Joe Salazar.
How's it going? It's a pleasure being here with you. So they asked me to come and speak about the Green New Deal, but really can't talk about it unless we bring it back home, right? Because, you know, I don't know if you know this, but since Polis has been governor, there have been 2,300 permits granted to the oil and gas industry. Over 2,100 in 2019 alone. And 179 just this past January. And this is a guy who ran on a platform of being an environmental warrior, of being a progressive. And we all knew that it was bullshit, right? We all knew that the moment that he got in, that he was going to compromise us, that he was going to compromise the state, he was going to compromise our environment, so that way the oil and gas industry could continue making a bunch of money. And how do I know this? Because as the executive director of Colorado Rising, as the chief litigator for Colorado Rising, and this is a shock to all the establishment, as the Democrat of the Year for the Colorado Democratic Party, I've been suing the hell out of the oil and gas industry and what they're doing to our communities. And just as the first speaker said, is that progressive, we don't leave anybody behind. I've been representing Republicans and unaffiliated voters and Democrats in a not so progressive bastion of Broomfield, Colorado, as well as in Commerce City, and fighting for people in Longmont, and now they are starting to encroach in my area in Thornton, Colorado. And we're fighting against them despite the fact that they're losing money hand over fist. Despite the fact that extraction oil and gas has gone from about $25 a share in November of 2018 to now trading at 95 cents a share as of Friday close. But yet there are still people out there who think that the incremental lifestyle is how we're supposed to do things. Do you know what an incrementalist is? It's just someone who kills you slower. That's what happens when we elect those types of people to office, is they're just looking to kill us slower because they don't want to get out of their own comfort zone. But not Bernie Sanders, huh? Not Bernie Sanders, huh? No. That's why this Green New Deal is super important to us. That way we can start transitioning over these oil and gas workers into other jobs. Jobs that actually benefit Mother Earth. Jobs that actually benefit our health, benefit our communities. That's what we're looking for in the Green New Deal. We're looking to make sure that these oil and gas companies and that these damn billionaires actually start paying their own taxes. And don't tell me that they don't pay their taxes. As we know from the Denver Post report that just recently we learned that the oil and gas industry here in the state of Colorado has failed to properly file, or has failed to file at all, over 51,000 severance tax reports. Over 51,000. Now, you know what? Maybe one time, okay, that's a one-off. Maybe two times, okay, well maybe you're making a mistake. 51,000 times? I think that's probably habitual. What do you think? So we don't know if they're actually paying the severance taxes here in the state of Colorado. We don't know what they're actually doing with our resources. We know that they're making money hand over fist, and they're taking it from us. And when we say leave it in the ground, they resist us. And when we have an agency like the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission that's supposed to hold their feet to the fire, they close their eyes.
Of course they close their eyes.
Of course they close their eyes. I just filed paperwork with them, filing a complaint against all those dirty bastards that didn't file those 51,000 complaints. And you know what the COGCC came back and told me? I said, you have to go back to the first day that they didn't file the reports, because the statute tells you you have to go back to the first day. And they came back and said, oh, there's a 1-year statute of limitations. We can only go back 1 year. And I said, oh, snap, someone doesn't know how to read a statute. Because one part of the statute says there's a 1-year statute of limitations for certain things, and the other part of the statute says that you could go way back because it's a continuing violation. But imagine that the COGCC doesn't want to do that. Doesn't want to bring in those penalties that would help go into our general fund to help education, to help higher education, to help our marginalized communities, because they're afraid of hurting the oil and gas operators' feelings. We need something bold in this country. We need the Green New Deal. We need to evolve into our better selves. You have heard me say that time and time again, that the time is right now. It's not tomorrow. It's not another year from now. It's not 2 years from now. It's not 5. It is right now. And you were born for this moment. to rise up and to fight back, and to stand with Bernie Sanders, to stand for the Green New Deal, and to stand for each other. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And as I always say, I love you. Thank you.
Folks, Bernie is a good guy, and we like him. Yes, okay. We have two very special guests coming up next. They're both fighters for education in Colorado and beyond. They're both fighting to eliminate debt that college students have accrued that is weighing down people like yours truly. Folks, let's give it up for school board member Tay Anderson and Representative Emily Sirota.
Hello, Colorado, how you doing? You sound like moderate Democrats. How are you doing, Colorado? Are you ready to elect the 46th President of the United States? My name is Tay Anderson, and I'm a proud member of the Denver School Board. And on behalf of myself, I am so excited to stand with Senator Sanders to be our next commander-in-chief because he will fight for public education. He's going to fight to make sure teachers have good jobs and a livable wage. He's going to fight to make sure that paraeducators, our lunch service providers, our bus drivers are being paid a livable wage. $15 is a great start, but now we need to start looking at 20 because we know in living in the mile-high income city, $15 is 10 years behind, so we're going to do the work to go ahead and say $20 is where our people should be at. But this election has to be about fighting for those who are part of our unions. We have to make sure that everybody has representation and has collective bargaining rights. Are you with me? We have to make sure that young children, young students that are choosing not to go to college but go to a trade have a plethora of options to choose from. We have to make sure those who are choosing to go to college can go for free. This election, we have too much at stake on the ballot because it's not just about firing Donald Trump and retiring his entire group, but it's about making sure we get good people to fight for us on every single different piece of government. That's from our local offices, from our school boards, to the mayor's office, to the city council, to the state legislature, and yes, we're going to retire Cory Gardner this year. Is on the ballot. Good jobs are on the ballot. $20 an hour is going to be on the ballot. We're going to make sure we have the right that the popular vote decides our president, not an electoral college. That's on the ballot. It is our time to show them that Colorado, that when we organize, now let's make sure that Senator Bernard Sanders is the 46th president of the United States of America.
And go. I'll do my best. I'm Emily Sirota, and I represent Denver State Legislature. I'm so glad to be here because our revolution is such an important organization. Because we focus not just on the national political debate, but also the races up and down the ballot, from school board to county commissioner to state legislature.
Yeah.
I was proud to have our revolution's endorsement in my own race for state legislature in 2018. Your help was critical to our success. You know, our revolution's name is particularly relevant right now. That word revolution, it's in the air. We've heard Bernie Sanders talk about creating a political revolution in America, and I believe we are closer than ever to achieving that.
Yes!
Some of our opponents, though, they want to make us afraid of that word. They want to marginalize us by pretending our agenda is too radical. So let's take a moment and go over what is radical and what is not. We believe that it is radical to be the only industrialized country on earth to sit back and allow tens of thousands of people to die because they can't afford health care. We do not believe it is radical to start guaranteeing health care to all as a human right. We believe that it is radical to be the richest country on earth and yet have almost half of our population struggling to pay for health care, basic necessities like food and rent. We do not believe it is radical to raise the minimum wage to a living wage and expand Social Security so that it provides our seniors with enough to survive. We believe that it is radical to have a tax system structured to allow corporations like Amazon to pay zero in federal taxes and to allow billionaires to pay a lower effective tax rate than their assistants. We do not believe that it is radical to restructure that tax system to make sure that billionaires and big corporations start paying their fair share. And we're going to do that here in Colorado this year on this ballot. We believe that it is radical to let corporations profit off our criminal justice system with private prisons. We do not believe it is radical to push for comprehensive criminal justice reform that ends those private prisons and roots out institutional racism. We believe that it is radical for federal, state, and local governments to bail out corporations with hundreds of millions of dollars of corporate subsidies, all while these same governments plead poverty to justify cuts to food stamps and housing assistance for the poor. We do not believe that it is radical to end those subsidies and use that money to instead invest in our communities. We believe that it is radical to continue subsidizing a fossil fuel industry whose products are creating a climate crisis that threatens all life on Earth. We do not believe it is radical to work to end the fossil fuel era so that future generations have a habitable planet. America has already experienced a revolution led by the billionaire class and corporate elites. They have radically altered our country's laws to enrich themselves. Our revolution is the opposite. It is a counter-revolution to stop their greed and start making our government work for us, not just the billionaires, corporate executives, and lobbyists who buy our elections. For most of my life, I wasn't sure that our revolution could be possible. Especially with the election of Donald Trump, it seemed as though the fight might be over. But since that horrible day, we have seen a renewed sense of our purpose. I've seen it on my campaign for the legislature, and I've seen it all over the country as people from all walks of life pitch in to fight back. And because of that, we stand here today on the precipice of history. If we keep working hard, we can be those heroes we read about in our history books. The people who at dark times stood up and fought back. That is our cause, that is our mission, and together I'm confident that we can and will not just win the 2020 election, but change the course of history.
Folks, Emily Sirota and Tay Anderson. I feel like today is Bernie Sanders 2020, but also Tay Anderson 2040, huh? All right, everyone, we still have a slate of incredible speakers. Folks, housing for all is one of the most vital issues of our time. We see it on our streets every day, and we see it reflected by our politicians who don't care at all about the homeless folks that are struggling every day throughout our city. Is that unacceptable? Yes! All right, folks, coming to talk about this issue, a homeless advocate in Boulder. Give it up for Darren O'Connor, everybody. Darren O'Connor.
Thank you all. I'm so grateful to be here. I am the co-regional vice president for the National Lawyers Guild in the Southwest region and the chair of the Criminal Justice Committee for the NAACP Boulder County branch. But I'm here on my own behalf to share on an issue of great concern to me. And the title I'm most proud of, most likely, is for the police in Boulder who do not obey the laws they're supposed to enforce. Pain in the ass. Before I talk about this, I want to point out Benjamin Dunning, who's sitting over here in the black cap. He is one of the people who helps run Denver Homeless Out Loud, which is 1 block away, and is fighting for our rights every day here in Denver. Thank you, Ben. So in the early 80s, President Reagan reduced federal spending on subsidized housing from approximately $85 billion in inflation-adjusted dollars by 80% to $15 billion. And we give nearly $80 billion in tax breaks on the mortgage interest deduction, with most of that going to the top 20% of income earners. And yet we fail to spend the kind of dollars needed to house our poor. Bernie Sanders, with our support, will end that. We lost roughly 500,000 units of public housing, and now the federal government counts approximately 500,000 homeless people. This nearly 1-to-1 ratio of lost housing units to the number of people experiencing homelessness is no coincidence. And a new report informs us just how much of an undercount this is, because a recent report showed that we have 1.5 million students in public schools that are experiencing homelessness. And that number is increasing rapidly, 15% in the last 3 years. The war on the poor has to stop. Our government created this crisis, and it exacerbates it with a federal minimum wage that hasn't increased since it was set at $7.25 an hour in 2009. Since 2009, rents here in Denver have gone up 50%. Just a few weeks ago, I was on the street right outside this building, videoing the police and contractors taking people's tents and belongings who weren't there to pack it up themselves. Just shortly after that, 2 men died of exposure in Denver.
You might want to note that there's rocks where those people used to
Right.
You can walk right.
They fenced the area these people were camping in and said we need to plant grass in February. Okay. Meanwhile, the city, in doing that, has a $6 million environment hazard contract with a commercial company to do these sweeps, as we call them. A budget the District 9 Councilwoman Candy C. DeBaca says would pay for 200 tiny homes and supportive services for them for a year. This war on the poor has to stop. Like Councilwoman C. DeBaca, Bernie Sanders understands that criminalizing homelessness throws good money after bad, that our unhoused neighbors, a majority who work but cannot afford rent in the mile-high income city of Denver, need help, not harassment. Instead of taking their protection from the cold and subjecting them to a great increase in the likelihood of frostbite or even death, they need housing, they need help. As president, Sanders promises to invest $1.5 trillion over 10 years in the National Affordable Housing Trust Fund to build, rehabilitate, and preserve the 7.4 million quality, affordable, and accessible housing units necessary to eliminate the affordable housing gap. Additionally, he'll invest an additional $400 billion to build 2 million mixed-income housing units, which will help desegregate and integrate communities. This war on the poor has to stop, and we will join Bernie Sanders to stop it. The time for incremental change is over. Millions of Americans are actually homeless, even if the federal government fails to count them. With our help, President Sanders will ensure our nation's wealth serves all of us and not just the 1%. I'm so grateful he's running, I'm grateful he cares, and I'm grateful I can support him here today. Thank you.
Darren O'Connor, everybody. Are you all still hyped up? Come on, everybody. What's the solution? What's the solution? Beautiful, perfect. Like an 8 out of 10, we'll get that up by the end of the night. Folks, our next speaker, do we have ICE protest leaders here? We do not? Okay, so our next speaker will be speaking on women's rights and how important Bernie Sanders' agenda is to them. Folks, give it up for Emma Tang, everybody. Emma Tang.
Hello, everyone. Oh, hold on. Not that short. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Emma Tang, and I am an 18-year-old political youth activist. With you all here today, and I inspire all young people, or I hope to inspire all young people to stand up and to take action. And I'm here today to use my privilege to advocate. Privilege comes in many forms, so I urge you to remember yours. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of points. 2 weeks ago, I testified in front of Colorado State Congress and helped them pass a bill that would mandate period products in schools. American, this is a race issue because we're taught to keep quiet and we're seen as delicate and submissive. And this results in too many of us lacking the proper education about our own bodies. And so as a student, as a daughter of immigrants, and as a woman who menstruates, I needed this bill to pass. Because each month, my body punishes me for avoiding pregnancy. And so the state should not punish me more by denying easy access to menstrual products. The bill passed, but until it is implemented, thousands of students like me and menstruators will still be forced to choose between their next meal and a period product. And so for too long, we've lived in a world where Viagra is not taxed, but tampons are. And that makes these products even more inaccessible. And 1 in 10 young women miss school because of their period. And we all know that equal access to education is a key component of success to our students. And the period stigma is one that women know too well. I know that I've personally been embarrassed when I buy tampons and there's a male cashier at a checkout station. I'm not comfortable with a male OBGYN talking to a male cop about sexual harassment, and I am definitely not comfortable talking to a male nurse about my female body. And so it is difficult to speak up and ask for help when society has told you that periods are dirty and should be kept hidden. And so from a policy point of view, with 73% of congresspeople being men, they can't even say tampon, and so they end up ignoring the issue and silencing us further. So now I say that it is time to be bold about our blood, bold about our bodies, and bold about ourselves, and we must vote out those who are too embarrassed to even say tampon. Will be covered under Medicare for all. And second, it is time that we criminalize catcalls and hold men accountable. And because for too long, women have had to take extra precautions to avoid dark alleys and empty streets. And yes, I know that not all men catcall, not all men rape, and not all men are dangerous. But when 1 in 3 women will be assaulted and 1 in 5 in college, it is enough for us to be careful. And on the subject of not all men, I can bet you that every single man has heard a rape joke and stayed silent. And so like the quote says, it is not enough to not be racist. We must actively fight against racism can be applied to rape and harassment as well. Yes. Bernie advocates for if we do not flip the Senate here in Colorado first. We must elect those who have been doing the work here for years and helped elect the first woman and woman of color to Colorado. There are petitions circulating for Lorena Garcia here today. And we urge you to show up to caucus for Stephanie Rose Spalding on March 7th. And so I stand for the equality of all people, because equality is not pie. More rights for us does not mean less rights for anyone else.
And I ask you to stand with me today because not just our well-being, but our lives are at stake. Thank you.
Emma Tang, everyone. Thank you so much, Emma. We must remember that we have people in our ranks who are men who menstruate, or women who don't menstruate. We aren't just brothers and sisters. We're brothers and sisters and non-binary siblings. And if we don't remember that, we're doing a disservice to our entire movement, right?
Wait, what about judges who are sentencing boys who are guilty of rape to no time in jail?
That's very bad. Everybody, that's wrong. Okay, folks, our next speaker is going to talk about the cycle of endless wars and how we need to end them. Folks, give it up from Our Revolution Boulder, Mark Williams, everybody.
How you doing? It's a powerful day today, folks. Our gathering here in the Bernie Sanders this evening, couldn't life be any better for us? I'm here to talk about endless wars. A little bit about myself. I'm a veteran, served in combat in the Gulf War, retired 2007 in the middle of all the wars that started on the heels of Afghanistan and 9/11. Today's an interesting day for me. I'm here, and my daughter's 17th birthday is today as well. She was born on the heels of 9/11, and her, like many others, have experienced nothing but a lifetime of war. That's never before happened in the history of the United States, and it's unacceptable that it's happening now. There's people that are enlisting in the armed forces today that weren't alive even when 9/11 happened. That's unconscionable. Let's think about what's happened here. $3 trillion. Money's one thing, but let's talk about something else. 250,000 civilian lives. 7,000 Americans killed, tens of thousands wounded. And the carnage continues. There are people from here in Colorado and Fort Carson that gave their lives in service to our country as recently as just last year. So I'd like to take just a moment in remembrance of those folks. That war is not just affecting families here in Colorado, it's affecting families all over the United States and all over the world. It's important to know that. As we look and we think it's time to get out of these endless wars, we think, what's the cost been? Trillions of dollars taken away from our country that have been spent needlessly in parts of the world that do us no service. And this has been the responsibility of every administration, at a minimum, for the last 20 years. Republican, Democrat. And so what I would say is, this is not about Republicans or Democrats. This is about a corrupt political establishment that is fighting for neoliberal capitalism and markets that they're protecting so that multinational corporations in the military-industrial complex can profit, and Bernie Sanders will change that. It's not enough to say that we want to pull out of the Middle East like President Obama did. It's not enough to say we're going to bring peace to Afghanistan like President Trump is trying to do. It's time to have a different mentality, and that's a mentality where the people are put first, not the multinational corporations and the profits. Let's put this in perspective. Over 50% of our budget, discretionary budget, is spent on defense. We spend more on our defense than the 10 next nations who spend on defense. $750 billion plus is what's been suggested. The numbers go on and on. We could take 10% of that budget, public college education for everybody. We could take 20% of that budget and probably solve the poor children problem that we have in America. We could take 30% of that budget and create a system of renewable energy throughout the country. That's what we could do with that money. But let me bring it home even more. One single F-35. And I was a fighter pilot, and I can actually appreciate the engineering that's gone into that thing. One single F-35 can fund a school district in Weld County. $100 million. That just ain't right, and it's time to stop. So, we need to get behind a president that will put the people first. We need to get behind a president who will bring that money home, and instead of thinking about the security of multinational corporations, think about the security of our parents, our loved ones, our children, and especially those who are at risk here in this country for all the damage that has been done. President Sanders, let's go!
When we organize, we win! Folks, please give it up for Mark one more time. Alright, if we are going to win, we need to not just get President Sanders elected, we need to transform the entire Democratic Party. Am I right? I was the first one to have that idea, actually. So, to talk about that and more, everybody please welcome Christopher Jacks.
Denver, Colorado. Our revolution. Where are my revolutionaries at? That's what I'm talking about. So, my name is Christopher Jacks. I'm chair of Our Revolution Weld County. To steal a line from Senator Nina Sanders, I'm a hell-raising humanitarian. We are out here trying to change things. So, in 2016, like a lot of you guys, I felt powerless. Powerless to stop Trump. Powerless to change our broken and corrupt political system. Powerless to see all these issues that we're fighting for sidelined. To not see them come true. But then, today the theme tonight is when we organize, we win. And that's what I did. 3 years ago, a senator from Vermont wrote a book called Our Revolution, and I read it. Bernie Sanders said that we need to fundamentally transform the Democratic Party. So I read his book, got in line, went to work. So I walked down to my local Democratic Party and tried to sign up. So, sorry here, I lost my place in my speech. I apologize. So, really what I want to talk about is personal empowerment. And that's what this is all about. It's about how you can take your power back, how you can go out and do what we did. So, right now we need to fundamentally transform the Democratic Party. This used to be the party of FDR, party of JFK, party of RFK. It's the party of the New Deal, party of the Great Society, party of the Civil Rights Movement, the party that took us to the moon. That was the Democratic Party, that was us. It was the party of we the people. And the secret sauce of that Democratic Party was we would bring in the people and we would pick community leaders. We would pick people who were already out there fighting the fight. And we would pre-select the most popular person, the person with the ideas, the people who could transform this country, and we put them up against a corporate sellout Republican. And we ran this country for decades under that method. But then in the 90s, the Clintons, the Gores, the Democratic Leadership Committee, a Koch brothers funded organization, put money into this party. And people started taking that money
and started selling you out, selling us out, selling these ideas out. So, Bernie Sanders came along and said no more of that. Said get involved, go down to your Democratic Party, become a member, get involved. So I did. Enough is enough. And right now, we're sitting here 2 years after we founded Our Revolution in Weld County. And I'm not just the chair of that organization, I'm also a member of the Weld County Democratic Party Executive Committee. I'm also a member of the Colorado Democratic Party's Congressional District 4 Committee. I'm also part of the Colorado Democratic Party Executive Committee, Central Committee. I'm part of dozens and dozens of other committees, and I'm not just talking about me, because this isn't about me. This is about us. And I got dozens of my friends that went along with me. We now have a comfortable majority on the Weld County Democratic Party Executive. 12 of our 14 members that go to state Democratic Party for Colorado are Our Revolution members. Almost our entire delegation to the CD4 committee is Our Revolution members. We now have a second vice chair, our first member of leadership through a vacancy committee. We have an Our Revolution member in leadership on the Weld County Democratic Party. That's 2 years of transformation, empowering people, putting people together, giving them the ability to have their voice heard. And if you can hear my voice today, if you're out there at home, if you're in this room, you can transform this party, and this is how you do it. You show up to caucus, you show up to your party, and you say, I want to be a precinct committee person. PCPs, that is the lowest rank in the Democratic Party, but it is the most powerful rank in the Democratic Party because they elect everybody every step above them. Your PCPs elect your leadership. They elect people to be on these committees. They elect people at the state level, at the DNC, and all throughout this process. You can do that. All you have to do is show up. I know in Weld County we have 100 of the 300 that we're supposed to have. 200 revolutionaries in Weld County transforms that party. You do the same thing in Denver, in Boulder, anywhere you go, we can transform the party. So we need people willing to step up, willing to step in, take the reins. All of you are activists. They're going to make it sound like it's a lot of work. It is not. You're already doing a lot of work. Realistically, if you're as involved as I am, and I am deeply entrenched in this, I spend realistically a couple of hours a month and a couple of full days out of the year. That's a small price to pay for your civic duty. That's a small price to pay to have your voice heard. And when I say have your voice heard, I mean it. I have heard my vice chair's words come out of a federal candidate's mouth, stand on a stage just like this, because she talked to him and she convinced him that her way was better. I've dealt with 13 different campaigns now in the last 3 years, and I have changed policies on every one of those campaigns because I was in the position to do so. So, on March 7th, we're going to have a caucus here in Colorado. All across the country, you're going to have this. And at those caucuses, all you have to do is stand up and say, I want to be precinct committee person. I want to be precinct chair. I want to be the delegate. I want to be the person to represent my people and my community. I'm not just talking to Our Revolution, because this didn't start as an Our Revolution group. This started as me and my friends bitching about politics in his garage on Friday nights. It really did. So, if you've got a D&D group, start it. You've got a sewing circle, start it. Fight for 15, I see DSA back there. DSA, you can do this too. I don't care who you are, I don't care how big your group is. When we organize, we win! And that's all it is. You organize your group can be as big and as powerful as my group. Your group can transform this party. Your group can transform this country, because that's what it's all about. What's the solution? Our revolution! Thank you guys. When we organize! When we organize! When we organize! All right, revolutionaries. Thank you.
What's the solution? Folks, give it up for Christopher Jacks, everybody. He's entirely right, and it's not just political organizations, it's the disabled among us, right? It's the trans community. It's the LGBT community on the whole. We need to lift up those voices and reach out to those communities and tell them the same information that Christopher said today. Because maybe they're not here, but they need to know it. Right? All right, folks, we have one last speaker, but boy, he's a doozy.